Hello everyone! Since we have reached the end of the course, I would like to take some time in this final session to recap the top 10 takeaways or things that I believe are important for you to remember in relation to testing and measurement. This short presentation is not meant to explain each concept in detail. Rather, it is meant to serve as a refresher on the large amount of material that we have covered in this course. It is also meant to highlight some of the important items and concepts that we have covered over the last 11 weeks. I go over these concepts relatively quickly, but please feel free to pause the video at any point to take notes. Since this is a busy time of year, there are no required readings for this module. Instead, I encourage you to work on your final papers. The first key concept to take away from this course relates to test use. It is important to always remember that the results from any test should be interpreted within the context in which they were collected, and that test results can be misused. That is, sometimes individuals may design tests for formative purposes but use them for summative activities. These types of misuse put the test takers at a disadvantage and thus must be avoided. The second takeaway for the course relates to the required text for the course, the standards. The standards help us understand if a test or measure that we are using or developing are appropriate for our given purposes, context, or populations. More importantly, we can use the standards to evaluate our tests, our testing practices, and the effects of our test use. The standards have been developed through a long-standing collaboration of 3 associations: the American Educational Research Association, the American Psychological Association, and the National Council on Measurement in Education. I draw on the standards regularly when I'm establishing the validity and reliability evidence of test results and interpretations. I encourage you to do the same in your professional practices. The third takeaway relates to blueprinting. So what is blueprinting? As you'll remember, oftentimes the terms blueprint and table of specifications are used interchangeably. Regardless of the term used, a blueprint defines what should be represented on your assessment tool. It provides validity evidence, namely content evidence, for the test results and interpretations. It helps you determine how you will test or measure something. The fourth concept relates to levels of measurement. It is important to remember that there are 4 different ways of measuring a variable. You can remember these 4 levels of measurement with the term NOIR, which stands for nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio variables. To refresh your memory on these 4 levels, you can re-watch the following YouTube video. The fifth takeaway is the concept of validity. So what is validity? Simply put, it is the degree to which a test or instrument measures what is intended to measure or operates as expected. As a reminder, validity is not a property of the test itself. Instead, as detailed in the standards, it is a property of the interpretation given to the results of the instrument. It is also important to remember that scores or interpretations from an instrument are never absolutely valid or invalid. It is also important to remember that we are not interested in different types of validity. The traditional form of validity is now viewed as being fragmented and incomplete because it fails to take into account the context in which the instrument is being used. Construct validity, under the modern conception of validity, is a unified framework. It is not a dichotomous decision that the tool is valid or invalid. There are also not different types of validity. Under the traditional conception of validity, you may have heard the terms face validity, content validity, or criterion validity. However, with the new vision of validity, as presented in the standards, the focus is now on the different types of validity evidence. Instead, We now talk about sources of validity evidence. This now takes us to our sixth takeaway in the course, which is connected to the establishment of validity. It is the 5 sources of validity evidence. So what are the 5 sources of validity evidence? Well, these sources were first introduced by Mesick and later adopted by the authors of the standards. They include content evidence, internal structure evidence, relations to other variables, response process evidence, and consequential evidence. Takeaway number 7 is the concept of reliability. As you will remember, there are 3 main types of reliability: inter-rater reliability, test-retest, and internal consistency. Reliability is important in terms of the 8th takeaway from this course, which is probably the most complex topic of this course. It is the topic of test theories. Test theories help us identify the quality of tests and test items. They also help us better understand an individual's true ability based on his or her score on a test. There are 2 main types of test theories, namely classical test theory and item response theory. The 9th concept that I think is important to remember in relation to this course is that testing and measurement issues move beyond numbers and statistics. Given the variety of topics that you are exploring for your final papers, it should come as no surprise that testing and measurement involves a complex web of economic, social, philosophical, historical, political, and ethical dimensions. This course focused on both the technical and socio-cultural aspects of measurement and testing. It also explored controversies associated with measurement and testing, as well as the role that measurement and testing plays in our lives. The last concept that we have covered in this course relates to test takers' rights in testing and measurement. Although there wasn't a specific module designated to this topic, we did indirectly cover it throughout the course. This concept also relates to the idea of fairness in testing, a topic that I know several of you are exploring in your final papers. We have all been test takers at one point in our lives. I believe that it is important for us to remember and reflect on these test-taking experiences when we are developing and administering tests or interpreting the results and interpretations that we obtain from them. Armed with testing and measurement knowledge, including the information from the standards, I encourage you to complete the following statement. Test takers have the right to. In fact, I challenge you to use the standards to create a Bill of Rights for test takers. Such bills will hopefully lead to the development of higher quality tests and measures and ensure that the results from these tests and measures are used appropriately. So I now ask you, what will you take away from this course? Please post your takeaways on the discussion board for Module 12. Also, if there are certain aspects of this online course that you would like me to improve, or certain aspects that you want me to keep that you really enjoyed, I'm always looking for new strategies to improve the learning experience for students and would love to hear from you. In closing, it has been great working with you over the semester. I have enjoyed virtually meeting you, and I hope that we will have opportunities to meet face-to-face in the future. Do not hesitate to email me if you have any questions or concerns about the final paper or testing and measurement in general. Happy holidays!